Okay, well, welcome everybody. I am Marigo, and I work as a UX designer at Clever Franke. And in a nutshell, what we do at Clever Franke is we take the essence from data and we tell a story to a user that highlights the most important things from the data and that guides the user through the story. And this is what I really love to do. I really love to help users make sense of things. And it's also why I came to the topic of calm UX. Because at a lot of companies that I've worked before as a UXer, a lot of the design and marketing was aimed at screaming at users and sending them a lot of things in order for the companies to seem like experts. But I feel like we should do it in a different way. So today I want to take you through my experience with calm UX, and I have some practical guidelines for us as designers that we can already start with calm UX. So let's start with a short history lesson. Actually, back in 2003, the BlackBerry is the one that invented the notifications that we know today. And they actually did this with the best intentions. They wanted people to spend less time on their phones. Because back then, actually, you didn't get any notification if you had a new email, so you needed to actively go into your phone, open your email app, and see that there was no new email, so you did it all for nothing. So they thought if we give them a notification, that they would not have to go into their phones when it is not needed. You're already laughing. Well, yeah, that didn't really work out the way we planned it, because as we all know today, notifications are being used by companies to send information and to really scream at us. And with all of the notifications that we get, there's really no way of filtering out anymore what we need to look at and what the important things are. So really, it is a way now for us to spend more time on our phones. And to show you how big of an impact that is in people's lives, some statistics have actually shown that people use their smartphone about 110 times a day and spend over 4 hours a day on smartphone interactions. And most of it is used in different apps on your smartphone, but also browsing and stuff. And also an interesting statistic is that 1 in 5 people have used their smartphone doing sex, according to this research. Don't know what for, but... So really this sums up into, like, we live in a world where all of technology is really screaming at us, and it's always trying to get our attention and drawing our attention from the physical world into the digital world. And it's not just notifications, really, it's all of technology around us. It's all aimed at getting as much of our attention as it can. And if we don't do something now, it might only get worse, because with the coming age of technology and all sorts of augmented reality, virtual reality, we might be looking at a world where there's no escape from the screams of technology anymore, and it might look like this. Now this is even more interesting, or important really, if you understand how our brains work. Because basically our brains have a limited amount of mental resources that they can use, and every task that we do requires a certain amount of these mental resources. Now, physical tasks, or tasks in the physical world, they're very automated. We have evolved to be very good at them, and they require very little of our attention. So basically, if we drink a cup of coffee, we can also at the same time read a book, because we're just combining all these tasks. But tasks in the digital world are still very new in a way to our existence as human beings. So they take up a lot of our attention. And that means it's hard to combine tasks, but also that if there are a lot of tasks that we need to do, it really overwhelms our brains and takes up all of our mental resources. That's why if you are interrupted for a Facebook notification, for example, it takes you about 24 minutes to get back to your original task. This is specifically the case when your task was very high demanding attentionally. And this is because of 2 reasons. The first one is, like I said, it takes your brain a lot of time to focus on a high attentional task. Switching between those things costs a lot of time. But there's also the thing that when you go into your phone and you look at this notification that you got, there's also a lot of other notifications. And you start looking at an important work email, but end up maybe looking at the Twitter feed of your friend's cat. So you really end up in this bottomless vortex of stuff. Now, as I was researching this, I found that there was actually 2 sides to this problem. The first one is really the way that information is being presented to us. It's really presented in a way that draws all of our attention, that asks for our full attention, and it also does its best to keep our attention. For example, your endless scrolling in your Facebook or Twitter feed, it's meant to keep your attention as long as possible. The other side to the story is that interacting with tools, as I mentioned, it takes a lot of our mental resources because the tasks are not automated yet. We have to learn them, and although over the years we as designers have tried to make them as simple as possible, it's still not the same as physical things that we do while we're doing other things. But during this talk, I really want to focus on the first part, so that's why I want to tell you this. So let's take a step back and see, how did we get here? Why did this happen? Basically, one of the big things around this is that business models are actually designed to make money from our attention. So a lot of big companies use very outdated KPIs, if you ask me, that are like, for example, time spent on page, time spent in my app. Which means that the more time that you spend in Facebook, the more money Facebook makes. And that's why they keep actively working on drawing your attention in, and they want you to drop everything to focus on their app or their product. Now, I'm not a businesswoman, so I don't want to go into this too much, but it's a very important thing, I think, to understand why the world is this way right now. And the way that they do this is they use a lot of our innate cognitive biases against us. Because over the years, we've evolved into using a lot of biases, escapes, to keep alive, basically. For example, we react very easily to sudden noises and movements in the environment. Because back when we were still like a caveman, that could have meant that there was a predator in the bushes, and reacting quickly to that might be the difference between being eaten or staying alive another day. So I think all of us designers also know about these things, and we try to use them for good, but the way that companies use them is also to steal away our attention and to make us do things that we might not want to do. One easy example of that is the way that we all know notifications to be. They're like big red bubbles that pop up suddenly, often with a lot of noise or buzzing and a lot of movement. And like I said, that's what we easily react to. And the other side to that is that they also use red bright colors, which is another example of something that we've evolved to react to, because basically that could mean the difference between ripe food or poisonous food. So it is no surprise that a screen like this, for me at least, it makes me feel very anxious, and I feel like I need to do something now. And now there's a simple trick, actually, and then like this, it already looks a lot better, right? And that's something that a guy called Tristan Harris is actually advocating. And he calls himself an advocate of time well spent, and he wants to make it known to the world that companies are doing these tricks, pulling these tricks on us. And he also has a lot of things that you can, settings in your phone that you can change that will help undo these tricks. One example of that is turning your screen to black and white. While I think this is very commendable already, I think that as designers, we can do better. This is just a band-aid to a problem, but we should really address the underlying problem. So what if we start looking at the way that information is presented in a different way? What if we can use shapes, colors, movement, anything that will help people see information from the corner of their eye at a glance and help them understand what they need to do? So basically, how can we as designers redesign the way that technology speaks to us so that it is more respectful of our time and our needs, and that we can design for a better digital world? Now that is where Calm UX comes in, and that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about. I was trained as a product designer, and back in the days, I was already very interested in a topic called calm technology. And this was actually coined by a guy called Mark Weiser in the 1990s already. And he said at that point, I feel that technology should be everywhere, it should be omnipresent, but it should stay in the background as long as we don't need it. And it should only be in the foreground of our attention, in the center of our attention, when we need it to be. And this is actually how most of the physical objects around us are in a way, because this glass of water is always there and I'm aware of it, but it doesn't come into my center of attention unless I want it to. So physical objects are very passive in that way. But now that we live in this world where there's so many digital objects around us, we also find that they're very active and they're always asking for our attention. So really the conversation is turning around from us starting a conversation to the object starting a conversation. Now, Emer Case is one of my personal heroes because she has been already advocating the calm technology and making it important again. And she wrote a book about this as well. In this book, she is telling about the guidelines that she thinks we can use in design to make technology calm. Examples of this are we should make technology that requires the least amount of our attention as possible, and that should create a sense of calmness in people, really. So what I wanted to do is see how can I apply these guidelines to my daily work as a UXer. So how can we use these principles in the digital world, and how can we easily start with applying this already at this point. So I came up with 3 of my own guidelines that I think we as designers can already start applying in every project without even having to go into the change business models, that we can really just start creating that calmer world. So the first one is design for relevancy. And what I mean with that is humans are not users in a way. We all know they don't sit behind their laptops totally focused on our design all the time. They have a lot of things to do. They might be on the move, they might be watching their child, for example. So we want to help them understand the data and present just enough information for them that is necessary to work with at the right time, at the right place. So that means that we as designers, it becomes even more important for us to know the data that we're working with, to be able to highlight the specific stories behind the data, highlight the data that's relevant for the user, and really design a data system instead of static pages that show all the data. Now, as I said, that's something that Clay Franke also does a lot, so this is an example of my own work. Because at Clay Franke, we have to make sense of huge piles of data all the time. And what we do is we take out the highlights for our clients to help them understand this data set. And this is an example of a client that observes natural forests and creates alerts when they see some deforestation taking place. So they started off sending this long list of alerts. This is not even the full list, it was way longer. And told their clients, well, here's all the data that we have, just go investigate yourself. So they came to us because they found that we need a better way to represent this. And what we did with this is we really dived into the minds of their users to see what is actually important and why is it important to you. And we ended up creating a design system. This is a snippet of that, where we really show the most important notification about deforestation at this time that they find important to act on, and we allow them to act on it easily. So instead of creating one page with alerts, we really created a system that they can navigate through the way that they want to, highlighting the important things. One other very simple example is also understanding what your user needs at this moment in time while he's doing something. So for example, if you're on your bike cycling to this meetup, you don't need to know everything, all the navigational points along your way. You don't need to know where you're going, you just need to know at the next intersection I need to go right, and after that point I'll get a new notification. This is a very easy way of highlighting what's important. The second guideline is design for ease of mind. So, like I mentioned, we have only a limited amount of mental resources, and we should keep it in mind when we're designing as well, that we should design calm interactions that require less of our mental capacity, and instead of designing against that, design for it, so that we don't need to put all of our attention towards something that's not relevant. So basically what that comes down to is that not everything needs to scream. We can think about using nudges and contextual cues that help people decide on what to focus on more easily, so that we help them guide their attention towards the things that require their attention at this moment, and not to the things that don't matter. So an example of that is we could look into using non-textual cues, because text is very high demanding intentionally. It takes you a lot of time to go through everything. But by using simple things like colors and shapes and movement of shapes, we can already create an image that from the corner of your eye tells you whether or not you should focus on it. So if this image is completely moving and shaking, then that might give me an indication that something's going on and I need to get out of this noisy area. But other than that, I'm just aware of the fact that everything is okay. One other example is looking at context. So not everything needs to be on a digital screen, of course. We can also look into how we can use the context of people to convey information. And when we do this, the message that we're portraying doesn't need to be that long or complicated, because the message is linked to a contextual cue that already tells you what's happening. So in this example, this shows a pill cap, where every time you need to take your pill, this thing lights up. So if you see it light up, you know immediately what to do because you need to take your pill. And this also helps you feel at ease because you know that technology is there for you when you need it to be, and it helps you to take the actions that you need to take. And the last one is design for humans. This might sound very logical, but I've noticed throughout the years that we, as designers and as the companies I work at, we use a lot of business jargon, a very technical explanation for things that people might have learned throughout the years, but they're not really human. So really, if you're designing, we should think about using very understandable language and familiar human-to-human interaction patterns that help people to take the right action, to understand what they need to do next. One example of that is also like tapping somebody on the back instead of screaming in his face, like asking for permission to talk to somebody. Now, an example of a project I did once is we looked at how banking in the Netherlands can be more innovative. And one of the things that I found in working for some banks is that we all use the term transferring, overboeken, so transferring money. But this is actually a very technical term that we have just learned to use because it means transferring money from one technical entity to another technical entity that we don't see. So for me as a person, that doesn't really exist, because what I want to do is I want to give you money or I want to pay you back for something. So we thought, what if you just use these types of terminology in design? So say, instead of transferring money, give money or get money or ask for money, things like that. That already make it a lot more human-like and less business-like. Another example of this is when you use the physical world to interact with your phone, for example. Because our phones are also physical devices that we can use in different ways than just tapping on an app screen. So what if we think about how people interact with each other in the physical world? Before that was sticky. We used to, if you sit on a table, you drank some beers together, people would throw money in the center of the table and then went home and the bill was paid. So what if we use the same type of interaction pattern, putting your phone in the center of the table, and that will trigger a reaction for you to be able to pay for your beers or your coffee or whatever that you're drinking, instead of having to go in an app and doing something that is not very human-like. So bringing it all together, I want to show you a little example that I made to show how, with some easy tweaks, you can already make something a lot more calm. Because when I was researching for this presentation, one of my colleagues mentioned to me that in the NS app, you can actually input your trajectory, and then it gives you a notification if your train is not running. So I thought that's really nice, because then I'll have more time. I don't need to wait at the train station for nothing. But what actually happened is my trains run every 10 minutes. And I just ended up getting a notification of NS every 10 minutes. And it buzzed my phone, it made a lot of noise, and it was like, it was a message like this that said alert, 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 and I just got totally crazy and turned it off again. But I thought that's really a bad thing, because the principle behind it really ties into what I think a calm world should be. So I thought, how can we redesign these things so that it actually helps me be calm? So a very easy example, I just took their notification and I tweaked it a little bit so that it actually becomes a more clearer message, and it actually highlights what I need to know. I don't really need to know why my train is not running. All I need to know is your train is not running for the next couple of hours. Stay where you are. And if you present that with a simple visual cue, like for example a train that's red, it already tells me at the glance of an eye, hey, there's something wrong with my train, I should really look into this. Also, another example is if you talk like a human and you just say, if anything changes, we'll let you know, that really makes me feel at ease and helps me understand what you're talking about. Now, of course, like I said, we should also be designing a design system instead of separate pages. So there might be some more information that we're hiding now because it's not relevant at this moment, but if people want to go there, they can. And then we can tell them why the trains are not running, but we can also take away some more of their worries. So we can tell them a little bit about, hey, you can check yourself here when your train is running. Don't worry, you'll make your appointment to whatever you're going to. But also what I want to highlight is that I feel that businesses might be afraid that doing things like this will actually cost them money because they won't get time spent on the app anymore. But I feel like there's also a lot of business opportunities, like in this case, adding some coupons for people to spend their time at a restaurant instead of at work, for example. So it's a very easy example, but I think it highlights a little bit how to tweak things easily. So in a nutshell, to me, a calmer world is a world where we are in charge of our attention and we get to decide where to put our attention towards and how to use our time. And I think that also means that as designers, we need to think about not only when people use our product, but also when they're not using our products. Because we live in a world where everything is screaming at us, like I said, and we really want to design for a sense of calmness and peace of mind that makes all of us feel more calm and alive. So as designers, I feel that it is our job to fire up this discussion about ethics, business objectives. Even if we're not the ones deciding on business models, I think we can help decide on more updated KPIs. So maybe instead of thinking about time on page, let's think about how fast can a user get back to his own life once he has closed our app again. So I really think we should advocate for calmness and let go of engagement, because that's very outdated and we cannot keep going with like this anymore. So as a takeaway, I would like you to consider the next time that you're designing, think about these things. So ask yourself, can I leave out something more? Is this helping somebody, or is there a better highlight to present to them? Are there more relevant data snippets? Can I make it even smaller? Also think about, what if I get this message 100 times a day? Because you're probably not the only company sending out these messages. So does it actually get through all of the amount of notification that we're getting? And also, is this what I want my user's life to be like? And the last thing is this how I would talk to my mother? Is this how you would explain somebody, a person in natural terms, something? Or is it more like you would talk with your colleague that already knows the business, for example? So really allow people to be people. So now I would like to challenge you. I would like to ask you, how are you going to create a calmer world? That's it. That's it.
I guess you made everybody think that.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask questions?
Yeah.
Anybody questions?
All right, are you ready?
Okay, I got it. Is DNS going to implement your redesign?
I hope so, but
Are you talking to them about it? They
No.
should though.
Yeah.
Send them a message or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thanks.
Questions? I'm terrible at throwing, but it's not that bad.
So, like I missed a little bit. So interrupt me if I saying something stupid. But how do you recommend to deal with the kind of tension between business objectives and calmness? If you how you say that? Or is this the whole part that I missed?
No.
Okay,
That's,
right.
I didn't focus on it that much, but I think as a UX designer, I've often been on the table with a lot of stakeholders and people that are involved with all of the marketing stuff. And I think the most important thing for us as designers is to really be the advocates of this calmness and to be the ones that say, should we look at this in a different way? Is this really what we want to achieve? Do we want to get people to spend more time on our websites, or do we want to help them with their lives? So it's more a sense of taking the role of the advocate of the calmness, I would say.
I have a question. Hi. How can we partner up, for example, with copywriters or with technical writers in our companies to provide more calmness in the products? Or from your experience, how is this collaboration with designers and other specialists?
Yeah, well, I think it should be a collaboration of everybody indeed, and that's why I think it should be something that we all feel in a way that's a common goal for all of the people involved in any of the design aspects of a website or a product or what have you. I think the best way to do that is to have all your colleagues get them also excited about this topic and help them understand why it's so important for people to not have to read this long text, but to really be easily enticed to start doing something. And one of the things I also did at a company I worked at is that they were very common to writing long introduction text to just almost a login screen or something like that. They had a very long text. It was just the way that they used to work. It was not, they didn't really think about it. So I just went through it with them and I showed them, is this how you want your users to get to know you? Is this what you want them to do before they get to understand your product? And I made them see, hey, this takes people 20 minutes to go through. Is this what you want? Just highlight the things that make it better to really put your attention towards this.
Yeah, I think it's also nice to have personas so you know who you're talking to, for example.
Yeah.
So you can relate to
Yes.
these people,
Yeah,
to your
exactly.
users. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yeah? Okay. Be careful.
Okay, got it. Thanks. All right, a bit of an assumption, but I feel like with being able to design calmer technology, we might need technology to be smarter in a way, because it should know what we want without it kind of telling us, which means in a way we have to give more access to apps and other things on our phones to know when we sleep, when we eat, when we do different things, so that it's aware of how to be calm for us. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think that would help, but I think it's also a matter of already understanding simple context. Of course, the more that you know about people, the more that you can really help them in their daily lives. But there's also a privacy issue, and that's a whole different conversation. But it's even simple things. I remember when I got when I installed Dropbox and I got my first Dropbox notification, it happened on all the devices that I was working at. So even just knowing, it's easy to know on what device I'm working at currently, what I'm interacting with, only send a notification on that device. So there's a lot of steps to take in between, I think, before we go to that
level.
Knowing what you eat and when you go to sleep type of thing.
Okay, cool, thanks. Oh, lots more questions. Okay, let's take the last 3 questions.
I was just curious about the example you gave of the watch with the squiggly lines. I didn't quite understand what that product was, and I was hoping you could explain a bit more.
It's actually a concept product from Kleefbanken, where we measure the environmental things, so noise, temperature, air movement, I think, and we present that in a more visual way. So instead of saying the noise is too loud for your ears, we have this visualization that starts moving or that changes color depending on what's happening in the room around you. So it gives you a little bit more information than you can normally see.
So is it about health, or is it like, oh, I'm curious about my surrounding?
It's both, but I think it started off as like making sure that people know that they're in a healthy environment, like especially air-wise, because noise is something that you can already, of course, hear a little bit, but air pollution or air, like the quality of the air is something that we really highlighted here as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting.
There's another question. And there was one also. Just throw it over here. Raise your hand.
Who is it? You? Okay.
Thank you. That was strong. I have a question because you said that the key performance indicators like time spent or I don't know, everything is like engagement is outdated. So how do you are gonna replace it? How do you have alternative? Of course, depends on the product what you are developing or designing, but still these two is still using right now in every company. So do you have an alternative to these key performance indicators that maybe we are not paying attention but are also important?
Yeah, I don't have an exact alternative, but I do feel that KPIs do need to change in the way that we think about how to enrich our users' lives. So that's not just having them spend more time on our page, but that's also how quick can they go back to their daily lives. So how fast can they do our interaction? How fast can they leave, really? Or maybe like things, people should not spend X amount of time on our devices because that's not really what we wanted to achieve. We just wanted to be a portal for messaging with communication, but not for dragging people in. So I think it's also a different way of looking at how you want to approach your users in a way and form KPIs around that. Don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, because always in marketing you need this for showing your progress.
Yeah.
And maybe are not the best, but combine it with another ones or new ones, you can show what is your progress.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can skip them.
Yeah, and the difficult thing is also that calmness is a bit more difficult to measure in a way because it's really, if everything is okay, then people will use your product less maybe even. So I understand that that's still a thing to consider, yeah.
Maybe loyalty increases, and that's more important
Yeah.
than engagement ever.
One more question, and I think it goes maybe where? Yeah,
You? No.
Okay. Oh.
The nicest way.
Yesterday I read an article on Nielsen Norman Group about the vortex effect, and it was funny because now with your speaker I can see everything. But on the article they talk about all the notifications and everything, how the people feel trapped and with the cell phone and how they spend like 4 hours on the phone. But we, as design, you have to do something to attract users for our product. But we have to measure how for the users not feel trapped, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, what's the way? I know you bring, but it's a long way there to see. I know you show the way of the NES. You can try to do that, but it's. I think you have a long way until we can find the right balance. Because today the users really feel trapped on the cell phone with lots of apps and everything.
Yeah, so that's actually interesting because one of the things that I found researching this is that at one point my Instagram showed a message that says you're all caught up or something. You've seen all the new things. Don't scroll any further. But they also deleted it right away. It was like it was there for one day and then it was not. But I felt that that's actually an interesting thing because even like I'm scrolling Instagram and I'm seeing all things. It's taking away time that I have already spent also. So maybe these types of paradigms are also the first step to take. And Facebook talking about how many hours have you spent on Facebook to make people aware of this fact instead of tricking them really, because that's what's happening now.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Anyone with more questions can ask her after the session. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.